we'll let Tom start out, and since he's the main guy, and if you want to kind of just go over some of your, never mind. Keep me straight. Okay, we're going to do our first item on the agenda is approve the minutes or the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the new business, A, discuss and take action on the sale of Deer Ridge property. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second?
Second discussion.
Okay. Do y'all want to enlighten us, Tom or Mr. Hall, on this?
Thank you, Mayor. All I need is permission to put it out, and Larry can answer this. Should we put it out as a sealed bid? It'll have to be out to bid.
You can put it out as a sealed bid.
Okay, and,
You just have to, say when the bid's gonna be cut off, work on the center, what time it'll be open.
okay. And I have do you want to know the start figure that I have?
I guess that's a common practice if you're
Okay.
doing
The start figure is $135,000.
okay.
Where'd we get that figure?
That's what we paid for it when we bought it.
And how long ago was that?
Stuart, how many years? 7? Somewhere in that neighborhood, yeah.
Did we have a real estate agent give us any kind of clue of appraisal?
No, ma'am.
I thought we did.
I can do that, but it's gonna cost money to get an appraisal, so.
Well, no, not a official, like realtors can,
Well,
give you a marketing,
It was actually less than that figure.
Okay.
Who gave you that appraisal?
David Cornwell.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could, I just want to say certainly I wouldn't want to sell it for any less than we paid for it. I think it's sad that we're having to sell it for, being that we've had it for as long as we have, for what we paid for it, being that the market is what the market is now. The only thing, I'm not opposed to selling that property. The only thing I would say is that I don't think that it should increase our cash position or does increase our cash position by what we sell it, because I think that money needs to be applied to the school's facilities tax, which really doesn't put us in any, doesn't give us any significant better cash position. That's how I see it.
I'm kind of on the same page as far as originally when I was talking to Mr. Hall about, potentially getting this on the agenda to go ahead and sell. My purpose would be to pay back the school facility tax to keep us in line with where we're supposed to be. And when I did see the budget, it was included in our budget, and I found that really disappointing because it's not supposed to, the money's not supposed to go for next year's budget. I would think if we were going to sell property, that it would be to put back in the school facility tax because it's what we owe. I mean, we owe more than that, but that would be the only stipulation for selling it.
Stuart, just so people understand, that property was originally purchased looking forward for a fire station on that location, is that right?
That's correct.
And since we moved the location of the fire department where we did, it kind of negates the need for one on that end of town, that close to the other one at this time? At this time, yeah.
The former chief told us that it would need to go in that vicinity. The reason we purchased that was to keep from having to use the Triangle School property to put a fire hall on.
Right. So I don't have a problem with selling it because it's not the same purpose we purchased it for, so.
Any other discussion?
I think you'd also
Thoughts?
want to include a statement in your request for proposals, stating that you reserve the right to reject any and all bids because, you know, might get something that's $134,999 or something.
It's gonna be minimum 135.
Right, but you still want the right to reject any and all bids.
So even if they
From
gave
absolute
us,
sale.
so even if they gave us 139 and we wanted to
It would
reject
be-
it,
Yeah, you could if you wanted to. You know, if you don't put that in, someone said, well, I put in a bid of $135,001, and you may want to sell it, you go ahead, but you won't have the right to reject it if you want to.
okay. And I would like to amend the motion to selling the property on Deer Ridge with it only going back to pay back the school facility tax.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Any other discussion?
Just for clarification, for accounting purposes, how, I don't know any other way to show sale of property other than revenue. I haven't seen any other, I mean, yeah, we can designate it to put it in there, but I am gonna have to show it as revenue, and I don't know any other way to show it.
Can you transfer it out? Can you just transfer it out? Under?
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's still an increase.
Right. Just one that we, if we're not gonna,
Increase and decrease.
one that we shouldn't take, we
Assets.
shouldn't,
Right, as soon as it comes in, I can put it right in
Right.
that, yes.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor for the amended? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that's it, or do I need to go back and do the first
The
one?
motion was to sell and the amendment took care of that. So
Okay. Okay, let's see, now we'll go back to the second item, which would be B, discuss and take action, first draft of budget for 2015-2016 fiscal year.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, discussion, Mr. Darty, if you want to go ahead and start.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to point out, and I apologize, I have two errors right off the bat. That one has been pointed out by Commissioner Vassell on the second page of the summary letter. The new unassigned revenue total, that figure, $5,318,832, should read $4,985,332.
can I stop you real quick?
Yes,
Does that include the 135 that we just said was not gonna go there too?
yes.
So we would need to take that 135
No.
off the, we would not.
Well, that's included in there.
Yeah, but we're transferring it out.
I don't see how we could. The property hadn't even sold yet, so we can't include it in till the property sells.
Well, even if we are, for purposes of our discussion, what I'm saying is we've just agreed that it's gonna go back into the school's facilities
Yeah.
tax. So it shouldn't be included in this number either way.
That number would be less than 135,000 if you take that out.
Less 135.
What was the number
It's
again?
50.
4,985,332 minus 135. I've got 4,850,332. That would change the unassigned, that would change our surplus to $426,702, less the 360. be 66,702 surplus. Line item on number 6, now this doesn't really affect anything in the spreadsheets. It's just I did not take out the expenditures. I should have taken out 187,229 from that number. It should read the total decrease the unassigned to 90,133. That is include the salaries plus the taxes plus the unemployment plus the retirement, all employee expenditures. But that does not affect the bottom line. In the revenues, I did change the sale of the property. Of course, we just took that out.
3610, 36,310.
I changed the mowing. I dropped it just, it was within $100. I mean, not $100, but within a few $100. I can't remember what I had in there, to tell you the truth. I think I had 2,800 and I moved it to 2,385. After talking with the street director. Primarily to get down to the surplus, what I did was move salaries. Well, let me just go through the numbers. Took 4 salaries out of highways and streets and moved them into the street aid. I took, and that pulled those 4 salaries plus the expenditures that go along with those salaries into state street aid. I took 1 salary out of the police department and put it into the drug fund. Those 2 items, with all together, all the expenditures were 187,229. So that freed up unassigned expenditures by that amount. I also scrubbed the department operating budgets even further. I've talked with all of the department heads. We went down, I feel like, as far as we can, and we're, now this is, if anything comes up in some areas, we're gonna have to use specialized, special revenue accounts. We took out almost all building maintenance out of the parks, all maintenance out of, a lot of the maintenance out of the streets. We'll have to do a budget amendment and take it out of street aid, or take it out of the park fund, or if we're doing landscaping, we might, for city facilities, we can take that out of the tree fund, but we've pulled it all out of our operating budget, and we're going to rely on taking it out of the special revenue funds.
How many more salaries do we have that's paid that's out of the highway department, streets?
In total,
Yeah,
well, we've got
Keith is a half, right?
right, he's got half coming out of park and half
26.
coming, yes, and then,
Todd.
and Todd's still coming out, yes.
So what difference would it be if we included those salaries? And removal of the 4, or adding of the 4 to be taken out of street aid?
From the original plan,
You're putting 4 in, coming out of the street aid fund.
right,
You got 2, you got 1.5 more.
I can't take them out of unassigned. They're salary employees. I gotta leave them where they are.
You answered the question there, okay.
If you look at the sheet that I passed out, it gives a breakdown of between Tom's first and second proposal.
Just take out 135.
Did I not give you one?
think you left me out. Do you have any extras? Well,
While I look for it. My problem with this budget is that we all agreed last week that we were going to take operating expenses out of unassigned revenue. This moves it back into street aid and the drug fund, which eliminates our ability to do the things that we need to do with those funds. Repave roads or whatever. Because we're basically now spending the whole state street aid money that we're going to get in next year by making this move. The other thing is, until we get any reserves built up at all, the state street aid is the only thing we have to fall back on. If our projections are wrong, there's nowhere to go. We would just have to do an immediate layoff. If we build the plan so that we're using that fund to make our budget.
Mayor,
yes.
were you done, Tom? Or do you have more?
No, unless there's questions.
I was just gonna suggest we've all sort of come tonight with some solutions, which is great. So I guess I'll just start, and we could work around the room.
That's good.
Is that table, rather? I guess I'll start by just saying, I hope I can get through this because I have severe allergies and I'm struggling with it. But I want to start with just the recommendations made in Tom's budget and just take them item by item and tell you what issues I may have with them. One, the restructuring the debt through Cumberland Securities, obviously that's something that, again, as Tom has stated here, there are no cons to us doing that. We were essentially left without a choice but to do that. But I will say this. As a commissioner and elected official, I'm tired of not having a choice. And I feel like because of our financial situation, I've been put in that spot over and over and over since I've been elected, not having a choice. And when you don't have a choice, sometimes you make bad decisions. And although I think this is not an example of that, I think that we have made bad decisions because of our financial position. And I guess with respect to that, my point is I just want to have a choice in the future. As far as the 23.5-cent property tax increase, what I'm going to propose tonight is even a greater tax increase than that. And that may surprise some to hear. But the problem that I have with this tax increase here, without doing more, is that we're raising on the revenue side, but I've said consistently that I'm not going to vote unless we cut on the expense side. And what this budget appears to do is cut operating expenses, and really operating expenses only. And the bulk of what's being cut in operating expenses is the result of the debt restructure, not really making substantial cuts. So if we look on page, page 6 of the budget, it appears that we've cut in total unassigned operating expenditures 40%, but that's smoke and mirrors. We really haven't cut that. We've simply restructured our debt that saved us about $500,000 next fiscal year. So, and I agree with Ms. Donna and probably what some others around the table are going to say tonight. I don't feel like we can cut any more in operating expenditures. We have cut to the point, and I've heard it said multiple times since I've been elected, that there's nowhere else to go and find any wiggle room in this budget, the budget that we have right now. This budget that's being proposed has cut operating expenditures even less than we had last fiscal year. We have, in this budget, and again, I don't want to go line item, but line item, we've really made no appropriations for improvements to streets. We've made very little appropriations for maintaining buildings and grounds. We have a nature center that has carpenter bees eating through the rafters out back. We have 2 AC units out, and we've got a budget that's before us tonight that makes no appropriations for that whatsoever, to fix those issues whatsoever. And I hear, and Tom has done an excellent job, and this is not me attacking Tom. He's simply coming in here and presenting us with a budget. But what I hear is we're going to try to take those out of special revenue accounts. If we're going to increase my property taxes 23.5 cents, we better be able to pave my streets. We better be able to maintain our buildings. We've spent a ton of money building up this infrastructure, and we're not going to budget to maintain it. That is beyond me. It is going to become dilapidated over a period of time if we don't budget for it. We cannot cripple the city by cutting operating expenses anymore. The sale of the Deer Ridge property. No issue with that, but as we've already established, that needs to go back to refund the money that we have borrowed, thankfully interest-free, from the school's facilities tax to get us through this year. Number 4, take salaries out of the highways and streets and move it into state street aid. Again, the same problem as Ms. Donna said with that. We can certainly do that. That's perfectly legal, but doing that doesn't allow us to do what the money's intended to use it for. We can't pave streets. It was my understanding there were about 3 or 4 streets on the short list that needed to be repaired this coming fiscal year. I'll disclose, mine being one of them. Mine being one that has a city park on it that looks like you're driving on a moon trying to dodge the craters to get down through it. Yet, we're going to move that money over and not be able to do those projects. If you're raising my taxes 23.5 cents, and this is Shannon Crutcher, a citizen talking, I want my streets paid. Take one salary out of the police and move it into the drug fund. I don't have an issue with that one. I think that's what that fund was created for, and that's certainly a legal or a purpose that is legal. We have the K-9 officer. We can use that money there. I think that's a great idea. Number 6, do not fill police open positions and keep salary status quo. I agree with that. But unfortunately, the other not-so-pleasant part of this that I'm going to talk about, I don't think that's going to get us where we need to be. Not filling one police position and maintaining salaries and status quo is not going to get us there. Number 7, further reduce department operating budgets. That goes hand in hand with one of the ones I just talked about earlier. I don't know how we can cut the operating budget anymore at all. So with that said, I put together my proposal as to how we can go into next fiscal year. And not so much for the people around this table, and I'm not going to spend but just a second on this, but just for citizens and others that may or may not know kind of how we got in this situation, because I'm about to propose that we increase property tax to $1 flat. So I kind of want you to know why we're here. And I'll submit, I think we're at a crossroads as a city. Since 2010, we spent more than we made each year. We've depleted our reserves. We've built significant infrastructure expecting a surge in growth. Yet, as we all know, with the 2008 recession, there's been a sluggish post-recession housing market and construction industry that's really just now starting to boom again, thankfully. We grew the number of employees in our city, and with the number of employees, we grew the salaries associated therewith. The average employee, and this is great, makes $43,000 per year in the city, which is a wonderful salary, very competitive with other municipalities. And then inexplicably, in 2010, despite all of that increase in growth or increase in spending, we cut property taxes, 6 cents. So as everything was costing us more, we take away a portion of a source of revenue. So it's my position that in 2010, the boat started taking on water. And before anybody realized that the boat was taking on water, here we are. And now it's too late to fix the boat. And what this budget in my position is doing is continuing to put a Band-Aid or plumber's putty on a big hole in this boat that's destined to sink. So we're going to have to take action now, drastic action. Inaction is not an option. And unfortunately, I think the only place that you can go in the budget, and this is not popular for a city commissioner to have to sit here and say, the only place that you can go in this budget to give the city significant relief is total employee-related expenditures. That's one place that we can go and we can find relief. Tom, in his budget, has the employee-related expenditures at $3.6 million. Now, as I've already stated, that's with the street workers taken out of that. So we would have to add that back in to really do the cut that I'm asking for us to do. I submit that the total employee-related expenditures should not be more than $3.5 million. That's about 73% of our total general fund expenditure, which would put us in line with other municipalities in terms of staffing. Now, I've done 2 or 3. I think everybody has a copy of this, and I want to put one up for you. Got one? This is just an analysis of expenditure cuts versus the tax increase, because as I stated earlier, I have said numerous times that I will not vote to increase property taxes if we don't do a cut on the other side as well in terms of expenditures. And what I did at the very top there is I took expenditure cuts, which equals what we spent fiscal year 15, or what we're projected to spend as of June 30th, minus the proposed in the budget. And in employee-related expenditures, if we take what we spent last fiscal year and subtract the $3.5 million that I'm proposing that we spend on total employee-related expenditures, we'll realize a savings of $340,789. Now, the operating expenses with the debt restructure, and I used the number in Tom's budget, the $776,000 number. If you subtract what we spent this fiscal year or projected to spend at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, less what's proposed in Tom's budget, that will be a savings of $554,665. Now understand, I want to be transparent and make full disclosure. A big portion of that is from the debt restructure. Nonetheless, that gives us a total savings on the expenditure side of $895,454. Now, to my proposed tax increase, which is going to help us on the revenue side. As I said, I'm looking at increasing taxes to a flat $1. Right now, it's 63.5 cents, so we would go to $1. That would give us, and I look for the tax increase, what we had in the fund fiscal year 15 plus the proposed increase. So the general fund increase, 21.5 cents of my proposed increase would go to the general fund. That would be for inflation. We've not had any increase in taxes, and I don't even remember when. We had a decrease in 2010. So that would take care of the inflation, which has been on average about 2% per year, plus a portion of what the BOC essentially gave back in 2010. And I hate that that's how it is, but I think that's where we are as a city. So the general fund increase of 21.5 cents would give us a boost of $365,500 into the general fund next fiscal year. I'm proposing that with the remainder of that dollar, which is 15 cents, that 5 cents go to the park fund. The park fund has never had, to my knowledge, any consistent source of money going into it. We take money out of it, it's kind of a fund that's depleting, that if we don't start finding a way to put some money back into the parks, it's gonna be gone. And then we're gonna have to rely totally on the unassigned general fund to maintain the parks. So that would net $85,000 into the park fund. I'm proposing 5 cents go to street aid to help with paving. That would be above and beyond what we get in state street aid. $85,000 to help with infrastructure assistance to maintain some of the things that we already have, plus help with some of the things that we know are coming in light of the growth that we expect with the new subdivisions. Once those roads are finished in those subdivisions, guess what? They turn them over to the city. Guess who has to maintain them? We do. The other 5 cents, and I sort of battled back and forth with this, and this we can talk about in more detail. In my first draft, I said that other nickel would go to do two things that has been talked about quite a bit by the BOC that we feel like needed to be done next year. One was a special census, and one was a study, an impact study. That 5 cents would net $85,000, which would cover, based on the estimations that I've had or heard, those two projects. Now, I guess my question would be, and where we would need to do a little bit more thinking is a special census really going to give us the return on our investment that we expect? And where I'm coming from with that is, it's my understanding that since around 2008, I guess it's around 2008, 2007, we've really only added about 200, a little under 200 homes. Is that a fair number?
If that many.
If that many? So,
Just to tell you where we're at with the water and sewer, they've added 196.
So 196 homes since then. So I don't know, although we think we've grown, I'm not sure where the growth is. If we've only had a net increase of 196 homes over that period of time, sure, we've grown some, but have we grown enough that the per capita return that we're going to get from state street aid and state sales tax, is that per capita return going to pay for the investment of the $30,000 or $40,000? I mean, surely, ultimately it will, but how long? How long is it going to be before we get a return on that investment? So I'm sort of battling back and forth with whether or not I want to allocate that nickel for something that may not be advantageous to us. But certainly that's a thought. Regardless, after the first year, I want that nickel to go to debt service. I want it to be put into a debt service account with the facilities tax, so that at the end, or that during each fiscal year, when that $260,000 payment comes due, we have it. We don't have to worry about it coming out of the general fund. We have it. There it is. We mail it off. We pay it. It's paid. So the total increase would give us a boost in sales tax, or excuse me, property tax revenue of $620,500. So you're talking about, with those two things combined, you're talking about $1.4 million that's being pumped back in to the city's budget, either through cuts or through increase in revenue. That's a significant amount of money that can change our financial position. We'll turn to that second page, if you would, Mr. Hall. On the second page, what I have done is sort of what you saw Commissioner Basell do on the whiteboard last time we were here, and we've sort of played with these figures several times even before that. But what I did was I looked at the actual revenue through June 30, or the projected revenue through June 30th of this fiscal year, and that number came to $4.4 million. The first thing that I did from that $4.4 million, which is what we've said we're going to do all along, is we're going to take out that $360,000 that Commissioner Basell refers to as replenished tax. If we do that, that gets us down to $4.1 million left for employee-related expenditures and operating expenditures, which is the number that we tasked Tom to use several weeks ago. Actually, it's a little less. I think we gave him $4.2 million, but I think in actuality, this is the number. This is where we are. Now, if we use if we take out employee-related expenditures at the level that I have recommended, $3.5 million, that leaves $623,000 to operate the city. Well, based on Tom's budget, with about as many cuts as I think you could possibly expect Tom to make, which was $776,000, that's what he has budgeted for operating expenditures, that leaves us at a deficit of negative $152,000. If you pump back in the general fund tax increase, the 21.5 cents more that I'm sending to the general fund, that gives us $365,500. That will give us, we'll be in the black. Now, this is if everything went perfectly, and we don't live in a perfect world. If everything went perfectly, we would be $212,000 to the good at the end of next fiscal year. And if you'll turn to the third page, and this third page is really just to kind of give the citizens an idea of what you could expect based on the tax increase. And I've listed home values in $50,000 increments, starting at $150,000 all the way up to $450,000. Now, I know we have a few homes probably in town that are worth more than that, but I would say the bulk of our homes fall in that category, one of these categories. So if you just start at $150,000, you're looking at a tax increase for an annual tax increase of $136. That's $11.41 a month. And then I'm going to jump down to the $450,000. I'm not going to go through each one of them. If you jump down to the $450,000 home, you're looking at a tax increase of $410 or $34.22 per month. That's what we're talking about by raising taxes to $1. Taxes haven't been raised in years, despite increased growth, and in fact, they've been decreased in the middle of the things that I talked about earlier. So as much as a citizen, I don't want my taxes raised either. But as much as a citizen that I don't want that, I look at these numbers as a commissioner and where we are, and I don't see a choice. I don't see a choice. I'm not going to be popular for making this proposal, not from an employee standpoint, not from a citizen standpoint. I'm probably going to be the most unliked person after we walk out of this room tonight. But that's my proposal. That's what I think will get us out of the situation we're in. We'll end next fiscal year with $360,000 in our reserve. We'll end next fiscal year with some accounts that have funds going into them to do things that need to be done, parks, streets, debt service. And we will cut away at that negative number we have right now and that we've carried for at least the past fiscal year. That's my proposal. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody have a question real quick before I go on with mine?
Are you going to tell us how you make the employee cuts? Or are you just saying cut the amount?
Well, no, I have suggestions, and again, and I think I've passed that out as well. What we funded this past fiscal year, there's about 60 positions in the city. And of those 60 positions, we actually have 59 employees because 2 of those positions are one person, Parks Director and Street Director. And again, this is not to any mathematical certainty because there's other things that have to be taken into account besides just the salaries. You have to take into account the Social Security, the Medicare, the employee benefits. So this number could be more or less once Tom actually sits down and puts pen to paper and figures out what the savings is. But I have submitted that with 60 positions, we would have to get down to 52 positions, 52 funded positions, and this is cuts across almost every department except administrative. This is not just us attacking the police department. This is not us attacking the fire department, the parks department. These are cuts organization-wide, if you will. And again, what I've handed out is just suggestions. You know, it's not necessarily what we have to do as long as we're at $3.5 million.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll go ahead and move on to mine. I am missing one paper, so I may have to borrow it from you. How about switch? Okay. First of all, I wanted to just kind of give you a little highlight. I have several different letters. One goes back to the restructuring the debt that we just recently received on May 5th, addressed to me, but it was for the Board of Commissioners. And it just basically, when it, under budget and cash management issues, says this overspending has reduced the city's cash balance by $1,206,407 from $1,835,160 at June 30th, 2010 to $628,753 at June 30th, 2014. And it goes on talking, this is, like I said the other night, was a basic letter, a standardized letter that they use because we applied for the restructure. But also I have an email that was sent to us by Tom off of inquiry, October 28, 2014, where somebody had contacted the auditors. And in the letter, it says they're questioning the audit. Our audit is firm as well as aware of the city's changes in spending habits, and the revenue are on the rise, but not have come to projections. And it's talking about, this is, Tom basically had to answer a question about our spending. So with that being said, we have this letter from the comptroller. We have Tom writing, answering, letting the Board of Commissioners know about the inquiry. And I start off with that just to say I've been concerned for a while about our spending habits. And this year, I felt like we were supposed to be status quo, not do major spending. And we tried, I mean, we were conservative on many parts, and money wasn't spent. Staff has done a great job. They cut. We did still buy things, though. We just took them out of funds, designated funds, but we still didn't stop. So coming to Tom's budget, I understand they've cut and they've moved money around, but in essence, it's too tight again. We're setting ourselves up to fail. I asked Tom the other day, because the state comptroller requires us to have 1 month operating expense in our unrestricted reserves. And I asked Tom if we were going to make it, and he said we should. And that scares me as the mayor because it's that close. And as a city, it's dangerous and reckless to keep going forward as business as usual. And so I came up where Commissioner Crutcher thought he was not going to be liked. I think I probably will stand right up there in line with them. But I came up with my own forms with the help of Ms. Brooks. But I had emailed her with several things that I wanted us to take a look at. And I met with her to try to come up with a plan. If you look at, well, first of all, I shared with everybody, and this is just the increase from 2010 to what we're projecting in 2016 of the fire and police. And this is just kind of to give you a basis to see the increase. And I don't know a lot of it from being on the board was anticipation. We were anticipating growth and using opportunities to fill positions. But the problem is, at some point, when the growth didn't come, we didn't get ourselves in line and check. We just kept growing. This year, people got promotions. We had positions. We were supposed to be on a hiring freeze, and we had positions filled. So when we have departments that are still increasing by large amounts each year, we need to take a look at what we're doing. I proposed, and I gave 3 different options that we could do that would get us out of this in a year. It will take a couple years probably to get us where we need to be. We are right on the cutting edge of where we're going to boom. But we can't count on it, we can't plan on it, and we need to be doing stuff like paving our streets, working on infrastructure, planning, and there's a lot of things available to us, but we don't have the money to do it. The other night, we sat in an industrial board meeting. We had wonderful guests all over the state that wanted to help us seek some of these industries to get our properties in our community certified, and there's a process. In the discussion, one of the options was the landowner pays so much in the beginning, and then a lot of cities in the end, because it's an expensive process to get your property certified, would come up with money. We're in the state that even those options, even those grants that come in front of us, we do not have the unrestricted reserves to have those opportunities. So I'm saying that when I came through, I did a no increase with just cuts. I did a tax increase of 23.5, and then I did a tax increase of 30 cents. And if you look down, let's take this one. It's going to be the one that says expenditures projections. And if you go to the back, you will see by making the cuts that I've suggested and by either just cutting in the first column, you'll see with no tax increase, you'll see with the 23.5 increase and then the 30-cent increase, what we can be. So at the end, the total expenses with no increase would be $4,429,189, with in our reserves $117,989. With a 23.5, we could be $4,829,100. Oh, that's the same 81 cents. That's a mistake. But it would be a savings. Oh, it's 8. Okay, sorry. $4,829,189. That would give us $517,989. With the 30-cent increase, would be 4,939,827. And if y'all, you got it, okay. And then that would give us in our reserve 628,627. Now, how did I get to that? This is the part I'm not going to be liked about. I proposed what it would look like if we took a 5% decrease in salary across the board and a 7% decrease in salaries across the board, excluding anybody that made $35,000 or less. With that, there was minimum cuts, because I know a lot of the problem has been with city staff is they don't want to cut. They've invested in these great employees, they've trained them, and they have, they're ready to go. They want to be able to move on to the future. And it would be costly to cut employees after you have invested employees. The reason I did this across the board, whether we agree or disagree on how we should get there, is we have to get there. There has to be a cut. We cannot be skirting the line with the comptroller, because when the comptroller comes in, they will dismantle our board, they will fire the people, they will raise your taxes, and you will have to pay for all of this, and we could go to the county. Now, I know somebody's going to say that is really dramatic, but we are very close to not to being there. And the thing that we've got to focus is getting ourselves off that line. It's a huge responsibility for city staff, Mr. Hall and Mr. Daugherty, to have to worry about how are we going to pay? Where's the cash flow coming? Every 6 months, any city has the problem, you've heard us talk about it, where the funds are short until we get our taxes. There's many times in those 6 months where it is tight. And so tight to the time it comes to December, they're at bare bones. So, it's a lot of stress, and I know it's their job, but I have, when I first started on the board, there was reserves. So we functioned with reserves and without it. I can tell you it was a lot nicer to have reserves. So we have to come up with a reason of how we can do this and what we can do to make us in a better place. Now, there were cuts in my budget. I have recommended that the grant positions for the fire department, when we don't budget it in, there is an opportunity we can reapply for the grant. But after the 6 months or whenever it expires, that either we have to let them go if we're not where we need to be, or we apply for the grant and keep them, which ideally, I know that would be the best situation. In the police department, all I did was move one detective out of the detective status, and that would be their decision, and you can lower it, trickle it down. There is a position open. I also took the recommendation of Commissioner Bassell and I think Tom on some of the cuts that we could potentially take. Let's see. I did the same thing as I think Tom still had in, where he removed the 4th of July out of the budget, and then we would have to solely go on donations. The insurance did not have a increase. So we would have to go with the second option of a plan to keep the costs. I was trying to think if there was anything else. The incentive pay, 20,000. I know that it was volunteers. Is that right, Tom? You said in the last meeting, the incentive pay where you're paid volunteers and you're,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
I think he moved that back up in his budget.
Did he on this last one?
I think so.
Okay. So I have that at 20,000. Let's see.
He moved it back to
The
40.
OASI is basically, you would take that down with the decrease of 154,187. Let's see, what else? Board and commissioners would also take the 5 or 7% cut. Incentive pay for the planning commission, we would also cut. Contractual services, Tom, did it say 24,270? I don't know how you thought you were going to be able to decrease that, but I left that in.
You want an explanation?
Yes, if you, I mean,
We're caught up on our back owing to the county. As far as for the EOC, 911 dispatch, we're paying $18,000 a year, $9,000 out of the police department, $9,000 out of the fire department. In the past 3 years, we had had to catch up, paying $18,000 out of each.
okay.
So instead of $36,000, we're now paying $18,000.
Okay. Now, I still go back to cutting the telephone services by, down to 40,000. As I look through the phone services, I think, as cell phones, we can go one or two ways. I'm sticking towards allotment amount, but I just generalized it because I know that, Mr. Hall has been working on options of cutting. There's a contract for, let me find that piece of paper. We have a contract through Windstream, and the contract amount was $612.34. The City Hall, and that's for the codes department, or Public Works, sorry. The City Hall is $3,334.55. Y'all had contacted, do you have any updates on that?
Yes, ma'am, Mayor. Sissy has met with Comcast, and she's going to be setting an appointment with AT&T. And hopefully we can get a better estimate by far than Windstream. And this week alone, I've cut 13,000 out of cell phone.
Okay.
We've dropped that down quite a number. And I think they were, in the past, they were kind of misled, that they were required by the city manager at the time to have a cell phone. And the word was they're only going to cost 99 cents. Well, he didn't seem to let them know that it was going to cost $54 a month. So this week alone, I've cut 13,000 out of the cell phone.
Okay. So with those cuts, and then if it came down to it, I'm still a fan of giving a allotment, a stipend, a monthly stipend. They could take their phones, they could keep them, and then the city would, one check a month, give them whatever that stipend would be. So, but if Mr. Hall and Tom, or whoever's working on it, can bring it under 40,000 without doing it that way, I'm fine with however it is. But I would like a policy put in place. Anybody that goes over their monthly amount their paycheck will be deducted. Because it's crazy. There are several times that people go over the amount. Also, I would like to put in place that the commissioners temporarily give up their phones. And if that's something we want to address later, that is just additional savings to the city. On clothing and uniform, 50%, and I think Tom had that too. But if we are on a hiring freeze, then it should just be replacement gear.
Tom actually had 22,000.
Oh, did he? Okay. Okay, so I cut, okay.
Is that just for getting new uniforms, or do we actually provide laundry service?
CMS, do they, I think the majority of it is new. I don't know, on the fire, theirs fades pretty quickly with all the perspiration and this, that, and so I think,
Do we
I
have to
don't
get?
think there's any cleaning. There is one bill. Who is that? Yeah, the streets, I believe, has theirs done, but I think everybody else cleans their own.
Do we have to buy any of those fire suits that expire this year?
Yes, a lot. Most of that has been bought.
Okay.
Okay, the next item would be that I did a decrease on is 331, and that's the gas, oil, diesel fuel. And I did a 50% or 15% decrease just by not taking any cars out of 37062. Now, the other line would be History Village. And Tom had, I think, 1,000 in that, and I removed it because I feel like that we could probably do a fundraiser and come up with that money from Citizens Help. Fire equipment, and this was another, it went from 24,000 in the 13-14 budget, and then 80,000 in the 14-15, and then the projections were for 78. I know that there was some equipment for the truck that had to be bought, but I thought that 24 to 80 was a big jump. So I put 50,000, and I did want to ask you, and then, I guess maybe the fire chief can share that with us. The 80, is that right, equipment?
I believe in my budget, I had gone down to 50, let me look. Gone down to 40,000.
Okay, so you
In this.
decreased. Okay. So we're good there. Okay, so that brings me to pretty much the end of the proposal. But if we do these simple things with the fact of there will be limited layoffs, we all sacrifice and realize that it is only a temporary fix. I know some employees will not be happy, but we have to weigh out. It's so crucial. We need to weigh out, do we want to keep our jobs, or do we all share the burden? There are some people that were 37,000, but they were like 37,600. Those people, if you were in the 35 range, you just got brought to 35. There wasn't a total 5% decrease. Any questions?
I just have a few comments, Mayor.
Sure.
And again, I know we've all worked really hard on these proposals, so it's not taking away anything from the mayor and her hard work. I know we've all spent a lot of time working on this and probably lost a lot of sleep, but one of the things Mr. Hall and I discussed yesterday was the possibility of, if we had the department heads come in and sort of talk to us about, I guess, what they envision from a staffing level with their departments. And my response to Mr. Hall was, I would expect that each and every one of the department heads would come in here and tell us that they need every single person that they have. And I wouldn't blame them. They need them. The issue is not whether we need them, it's whether we can afford them. And as much as I want to keep every single person we have, I think we're sort of at a point where we do have to do one of two things, either what I'm proposing or what the mayor's proposing. The only thing I would say with what the mayor's proposing is that we've talked a lot about employee morale, and, you don't ever want to sacrifice anybody, and that's probably a poor choice of words, but we're talking about cutting salaries across the board for the entire organization, which affects all 59 people that are employed here. What I'm proposing is a cut in funded positions that would affect far less people than that. And in addition to asking them to take a decrease, either 5 or 7%, depending on what the board chose to do, we're going to ask them to pay more for their health insurance. We're going to ask them to pay for 50% of their uniforms. We're going to ask them to do other things in here, pay back if their cell phone goes over a certain amount. And it's my position that the pay cut across the board, when asking them to do these other things, if you want to talk about a morale killer, I think we have it. That's going to permeate throughout the entire organization. So I don't know that I could support, and if the board decides to do it, I'm going to support whatever we decide to do. But I don't know that I would vote for cutting salaries across the board, respectfully. I just think, and with my proposal and with the numbers that I've put up, when we get to the third item on the agenda tonight, if we do the things that I've talked about in agenda item number 2, I don't care which insurance policy we pick. It doesn't matter anymore. We can pick whichever one we want that fits inside that $3.5 million number. If we want the best for 51 employees, we can get the best that we can get for 51 employees. So,
Well, with that being said, though, I mean, there's enough in my budget that we could go with the number one top choice also. And you talk about morale, watching your buddies go too is a tight-knit group. And I hate for anybody to have to pay for our mistakes, but unfortunately, we're at the point where it's bodies or programs. The salary is so top-heavy that this would end up allowing us to do our stabilization plan and give us more. Then, when it comes back to at the end of the year for the next year, we can always go back the next year and increase them. Or we can end up, there's so much that we could do to make it right. It's just like, and it happens all the time. It doesn't mean it's right, but during 2008, 2009, there was many companies, and I know a couple people in Fairview, that their bosses came and said, we're taking across-the-board cuts, and that's what you did. I'm just proposing, I don't care if mine, yours, however it goes, I wanted another option because these department heads and city manager, you can tell by the way they're doing their budget the last thing they want to do is let go people. I'm sorry, did you have something?
Well, I was just gonna say, going along with, on Shannon's line, if you affect every employee, you're gonna decrease productivity. If you only affect certain employees and the positions are eliminated, the people that are here are probably going to even work harder because they don't want to be next. They want to show everything they can do in their position to get something done. So I don't know exactly where Shannon's plan exactly leaves us, and you said it went from 59 to,
Down to 51 positions, but a couple of those positions, 2 or 3 of those are already vacant.
okay.
So it's not, that affects not only 9 people necessarily, it's lesser number.
Okay.
Again, that would, we would have to put pen to paper to figure out. It could be even less once you take into account the other things that I.
Right. Right. Because there's a lot of added costs other than just the salary, period.
Right, and I'm just doing it based on salary.
So you might have enough in Shannon's plan in retirement, and all those things added together, that it's only 3 people instead of 5.
Possibly, depending on.
Whatever the figures end up being, that's
That's right.
Well, and here's another thing, you were talking about the uniform cost. That is, we're not asking them to pay. It's just, we're not hiring any new people, so the allotment for new uniforms would not be as high. They don't have to pay for their new uniform. We're not asking for money out of their pocket.
Gotcha.
So, it's a big difference.
I misunderstood, I'm sorry, I didn't.
But the other thing on the, you had stated the other day that it needed to be across the board. You came in today and we've drawn a line in the sand and some people were untouched. And to me, if somebody was making 34.9 and they didn't get touched, but somebody was making 37 and got bumped down to 35, I mean, you're creating friction there where we can just say, for possibly a year, we can do without this particular position, and then you don't affect the rest of the workforce. You make them work harder.
Well, and that's fine. I was just given an option for
Right.
not,
No, no,
'cause
I'm-
they're fighting. They don't want to let go of people. They don't want to give up their staff. So I'm trying to give a solution where they don't. And the only reason we did it across the board, we figured it out all the way down, but it's still going to be that much more devastating on the employees that make below 35,000. That we were just trying to be mindful. But, you know, if you think it's going to affect employee morale, we could take it all the way across the board if that's the way we
No,
went.
I'm not saying that at all. The figure you came up with that being the cutoff, that's perfectly fine. I don't think that is the way to go. I think, me personally, I think Shannon's way and going and looking at value in each department and seeing what we can possibly do without, that's the way to go.
Okay. Well, and consider though, with Shannon's, which a $1 increase, which I was pulling this out when you were speaking, we have had decreases since 1995, and it was 100, and I read this the other day, $100.10. And we have steadily increased every 5 years by 20 cents, and then 2, and then down. The only time we increased it was 2004 to 2005. We went from 72 cents to 84. Now, my proposal does offer a less of a tax increase. With that being said, there is an option to do it with no tax increase. But we're not going to be, you know, we're still going to have trouble next year finding, yes.
I think at this point, if you all agree that the cut should be to 3.5 million, that it's time to send it back to the department heads and let them decide which way to go. would it be better for employee morale to cut the positions or everybody take a cut?
Yes.
I have a alternative solution. And let me get through all of it before. I don't agree that there cannot be further operating expense cuts. I think when people are faced with the realities of this is how much I have to make it last, ingenuity will take over, and you don't know what you can come up with until you're actually faced with the problem. As I see it, we have using Tom's as the base, to get to the 3.5 million, we can get there by doing the following things. We can, for the coming year, go ahead and use the street aid to supplement the salary for those workers with the idea that next year we would not do that. That gets us down to $160,000. We can go with the second insurance policy as the insurance policy. That saves the city another $36,000. So that gets us down to a need of 124. And we can implement a no hire, no promotion policy firm. Absolutely. We experience a 2% attrition rate each year. None of these figures factor an attrition rate. So the 2% attrition rate will be something in terms of further reducing it, and for argument's sake, I'm gonna say $25,000 that we will save in salary. So we're looking at $100,000. We take the $100,000, and we take $50,000 from overtime and $50,000 from part-time, and we balance. And nobody gets laid off.
Well,
I have a question. I'm sorry, Don, go ahead.
in part-time are very specific positions. So if you're gonna make cuts from part-time, you gotta identify what those positions are. Because it's the park rangers, it's the
Janitor,
janitor,
programs people in the summer.
yeah.
You've got.
It's not
I
just you
think
can
that's
cut it
Mr.
back.
Hall's decision.
Well, but, go ahead, Mr. Hall.
How you gonna cut the janitor? Who's gonna clean the building?
That's what I was going to suggest, as far as cutting the janitor. We have a contract with the county. We have to have that building cleaned, and we do have a contract with the county to supply a janitor to clean that. And of course, I realize that the Parks building and the police department and City Hall is part of that person's responsibility. But we do have a contract that we do have to supply janitorial services to the medical center.
So that would be a cost, for example, that you would want to go to your other operating expenses and find a way to offset.
I just want to say this, with respect to part-times, and I know, part-time, I know you, how much did you say, 50,000 there? You could get it down to 50,000 or cut 50,000 there?
Got $50,000 from it.
Well, here's the issue with that, and we'll go through just the people that are in part-time salaries, because I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out this weekend. One is the janitor, which we've already established we can't cut. That's about $16,000 of that number. For whatever reason, Judge Dreyer is in that number. I have no idea why, but Judge Dreyer, oh, he's in overtime? So I stand corrected. He's in still, I don't know why he's in overtime. But Judge Dreyer's salary is not overtime for this line item. Don't know why, but it is. So you have the janitor, you have 3 park rangers. I don't know, maybe we need 2 instead of 3. I have no idea. I assume we need 3 park rangers because we have 3 park rangers and they're all part-time. So I guess that's better than having 1 or 2 full-time park rangers. We have the folks that do programs in the summer. That's certainly a place that I think in my proposal that I've looked at cutting. Again, that's probably not gonna be popular with the parks folks, but, if you're talking about absolute essential services that we have to offer as a city, parks programs is probably not one of them. So that could eliminate some of those part-time positions there. The other part-time position, I believe, is a guy in streets. That's probably a department where we need all the help we can get, to be honest. I don't know we could cut there. I mean, I respect that you say we can cut that by $50,000, but I just don't know how. I don't know how with the
He's
folks.
actually already cut the streets. In his new proposed budget, he'd already cut the streets.
Out of the part-time. So you would take that one out.
Oh,
but
okay.
I don't see how you can get that down to $26,000 in salaries when 16 of it is a janitor.
Well, like I said, that's probably in the items that I just made note of as I was listening to you and the mayor, that the items that went through there, I think that we probably could find $16,000 in other cuts to do janitorial service. I don't know that the janitor needs to be cut.
Well, and the other issue, again, and
But I can tell you that, we've gone to a lot of effort to like build up the programs. If you won't need any part-time people in the summertime if you don't have the program manager and the naturalist there to oversee the effort. But you can still have some programs if they're there. You won't, the park ranger part of it, you reduce the hours available to the park rangers. Well, we have a police department that can fill that role. If something happens, you lose your presence, but you still have somebody that can do that role. Whereas if you keep all the park rangers and cut policemen, you then don't have people that can do the other role. So it only makes sense that in evaluating this, you look at the people that have limited functionality versus folks that have entire functionality. And that's how I came to the conclusion. And I have said all along that overtime is a luxury. The law says if it's not in our budget, we don't have to pay it. We can give comp time all day long. And does that create its own problems because you have people with comp time? But you can manage comp time the same way that you do vacation time. You have to sign up for it in advance. There has to be plenty of people on the shift. You can do that. Overtime is not a legal requirement if you do not have it in your budget.
But you're still paying for it, even the comp time. You're not paying maybe the overtime rate, but you're still paying the people.
Well, sure you are.
Well, we only have 76,000 in overtime in here. 16,000 of it is the judge. I don't know why he's in there, but, so that only leaves us 50. And then, unless we change our holiday policy, some portion of that is holiday pay. So,
Well, maybe we need to change that policy. I don't know, but I'm just telling you that we seem to be jumping to a conclusion to let permanent employees that we have invested in leave. It seems to me to be there seems to still be other alternatives to doing that. And I don't, maybe if we, I don't know. I said what?
Does your plan in street aid and paying those salaries, is it exactly what Tom presented? Or
Yeah, I think,
does that leave any money to pave streets?
well, if it does, if you vote for his tax increase.
But I'm not gonna approve you may vote for my tax increase, but I'm not gonna vote for my tax increase if those salaries are in streets. Because I don't think it does leave it leaves $85,000 that's coming in from my nickel tax increase. That was a supplement to the state street aid, not to be used entirely to do road maintenance. It seems like to me, we're at a point, and I get it. I get your passion for the employees, and I feel the same way, and I understand we don't want to lose anybody. But we are at a crossroad where we've got to make a tough decision. And I don't feel like that trying to cut operating expenses, finding places to cut operating expenses so that we're crippled as an organization. And I know you and I disagree on this point, and that's fine. And Commissioner Bassell and I'll say, we probably look like we butt heads, and we don't dislike one another despite what it may look like. But I just don't think we can cut operating expenses anymore and function and provide the service. You're wanting to cut operating expenses in your proposal, increase taxes, and not provide any additional level of service based on that tax increase. And that's not acceptable to me as a citizen. It's just not. I mean,
And possibly have employees that don't have the resources to go do what's needed because the money's not there.
Plus, the comptroller office is telling us we got to get our house in order.
and I will say quickly, just with respect to the health insurance, sure, we could offer that option that I've laid out, that second option there, which will save in the neighborhood, I think the number was $30,000. But what I didn't account for, and what I thought I specifically asked Mr. White the other night, was did that number include the dental? And he said, no, it doesn't, but the number that was included in the budget did. So really, the savings is not $30,000, it's $15,000 when you throw that dental back in. So you would have to find an additional $15,000 for a net of $45,000 to really get it down to the level that you're proposing.
John, I think you're adding it twice, but that's okay.
Well,
Either
and
way, it's an additional $15,000.
I just want to throw in there, every day that we have funds out of the school facility tax, we are putting our management in risk. Now, I know that we didn't, as a board approve it, Mr. Control said that. But it puts them at risk. Our goal this year should be to put our business back in order. Repay the account, save it for the kids, not ever touch that account unless it's for the kids. Excuse me. Build our reserves. Back up, at least do the 360 that we have a resolution for. Now we have an obligation to do it. And that was off of recommendation two from MTAS. Was it the comptroller or just MTAS on the stabilization plan, Mr. Darty?
It came from MTAS.
Okay. So now we have that in place. We have everything lined up where we can be in a better place next year if we just cut. And we got to cut somewhere. And I tend to agree, it's great to have all these employees, but if they don't have the money and the funding to do their job, then who are we helping? So either we cut positions or cut the salaries or programs, the third option. But when you cut programs, you're cutting people. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, how long would it take you to get the costs together for looking at Shannon's plan? All the related costs to the salaries?
It wouldn't take me very long. I'd say 5-10 minutes.
That's pretty good.
I've got everything.
Including the cut in employees, the reduction from 60 to 51?
I've got everything set in my spreadsheet where when I plug a number, it changes the totals. So,
He's not telling you who to get rid of, are you?
No, not.
You gotta choose that.
not
You're gonna have to
specifically.
go
I think I did skirt around the Parks Department a little bit while ago, just saying that if we want to do it organizational wide and we're looking for positions that, and again, I'm not so much hesitant to say it about the Parks Department because although that's a luxury that we have that, I don't think it's a necessity that we have that. However, when I start saying what positions we need in police and fire, I'm really stepping outside of my professional expertise. And I'm doing it from a management standpoint, and I know that sometimes boots on the street doesn't really care what a seat has to say. So, but I can go through what I've come up with. I don't mind sharing.
Can I say this about the parks? If you get rid of the programs, you might as well get rid of everybody and we just operate like a state park. They don't have people doing all the stuff that we do in the park.
Well, they have maintenance. They have maintenance
Yeah,
and security.
we would need a maintenance for the building and, if trails got it wrong.
Yeah, that's what I said, maintenance and security you'd have to have.
Well, 5 years ago, we did not have park rangers in our budget. Like, looking back, we did not. Now, I know there was employees. You know, I'm sure there was a director and,
I mean, we can have the
It may not
police
have been called
open
ranger.
and close it and ride through there every now and then, but
maybe Sixers, I don't remember.
I'm
The beauty of
sorry.
the Park rangers is they are part-time folks, that's helpful, we're not talking about full-time positions, which part-time positions don't have the impact on the city from a dollar standpoint that a part-time guy does. Yeah. So,
You know, I can go through this, and what I said initially, in fiscal year 15, we have 60 funded positions. And my proposal is that we limit that down to 52, which, again, we may or may not need that many, depending on what numbers Tom comes up with. But here's what I've done. Obviously, the city manager will remain unchanged. There's no change in the finance department. There's no change in my proposal in the codes department. In the court, there's no change. In the fire department, we would have a chief, 3 captains, 3 lieutenants, and 5 firefighters, 3 of those which are grant positions, which we would be able to, under this proposal, we need to get another grant guy in there, and we would be able, under this proposal, to keep those 3 grant guys. And, you know, I hate that, because there may be somebody that's not a grant guy that's hired on, that because of the circumstances surrounding the grant would be one of the casualties in this department. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of how that grant works. I will say that I did do some research on the FEMA Safer Grant, and I'm sure Mr. O'Neill can enlighten us more on that. But I did try to ascertain whether or not if we did not hire those grant guys on, whether or not we would lose our ability to get funding in the future. And from all I could read, unless there's something in some specific grant document, then we could apply for future grants. Now, whether or not we're on some under the table blackball list because we didn't hire those people, that may be the case. But
Works is, you can reapply as much as you want to. But those guys were gotten to make a minimum staffing of 4, because OSHA said you have to have 2 in, 2 out in order to fight a fire. And even for medical calls, they recommend a minimum of 4. Whenever we do not hold those positions, we're in contract that we planned on holding those positions. If you do not, you can reapply, but you're not going to get it because you didn't hold your word in the beginning.
sure.
If you do not rehire a safe grant position, such as one we have open now for the fulfillment of the grant, they can come back and charge you for the entire grant, several $100,000. So there is no retention. You can't put in to retain them. That's not going to happen.
Well, I read it too, and I didn't see where it said anything about that. It appeared to me, all it did was take away, like, if we didn't replace that position, because I know when I asked about it, Mr. Hall, and I'm sure he got the information, said that if we didn't replace that, we could have to, pay the position back. Now, I mean, you may have a different, I was just looking online, so there may be something in the contract that, if y'all just give me a copy and show me that, where it is, that'll be fine. I mean, I just based it off of the
Well, al-
website.
Also, as a part of that contract, you cannot drop, such as right now, while the grant is in process, you cannot drop your staffing by one.
But you're
Or you can
billed,
have to pay
right?
it back.
Are you can't, you have to maintain the same amount of employees that you started
Throughout.
with, so 10 employees. So if one quits.
No, you have to maintain your staffing, including the grant people.
Right, you
Right,
have, well.
15 is what we have now. That's what we'd have to maintain through the
Okay,
grant
so when we
process.
got the grant, we had 10 employees.
Or what happens?
Do what?
Or what happens if you don't?
They can make you pay it back.
Does
How many-
anybody
how
have a
many-
copy of the grant?
How many
But
people-
because a part of that is, the whole reason you did it is to add to your staffing. So if you're not adding to your staffing, then you're basically going back on what you've agreed on, the whole purpose of getting the grant.
Sure.
So you can reapply all you want, but kind of how it works is if you give somebody a loan and they don't stick to the contract, they might reapply later, but if 100 other people apply, they're going to come back and give you that grant. One of the guys we deal with is actually one of the readers. He goes to Washington DC and reads those grants to approve
But
them.
they don't.
So
But they do not have to keep.
Who has a
that.
copy
has
of,
it?
who has a copy of the
I'm sure I
paperwork?
can get a hold of a copy.
Well, we need a copy, we need to get a copy to our attorney
Number has to be the same.
as
Numbers
soon
that
as
they
possible.
had when they got the grant.
Larry, what knowledge do you have of it? What knowledge do you have of it?
I've read the grant.
This one will leave.
But it's better than that.
I'm pretty sure it's the same, what he's saying. is supposed to have-
How many,
12.
I don't know.
Chief O'Neill, how many
When,
how many people were employed in the department when that grant was obtained?
I'm not positive. I think it was 14.
He had told them.
Well, we obviously need to get with Larry, and that may mean we have to find other places, unfortunately, if that's the case. And what I would say is this, and I hate to say this, because what one of my recommendations was gonna be, is that we keep those, again, I hate that for somebody else, but that we keep those 3 guys that are on grants, retain them at the end of at the grant, which would end in February, and then hopefully get more on another grant. But if that's how this grant works, as bad as I hate to say, let's turn down money, but if it's gonna cost us or potentially create a problem for us, if we can't maintain that level of staffing after that grant's up in 2 years, I don't see how we can keep in that cycle. Because we're gonna have a fire department that's 6 years from now, it's gonna be huge because we can't get rid of grant people.
Well, as far as the operational stuff, I still have places I could probably try to make room for that, but cutting the manpower is going to restrict me more than cutting operations more, because once you take that extra guy, and I've not got 4, you've limited us worse than cutting our budget more.
Okay.
That manpower is a lot more important.
Isn't there a time frame in there for having to maintain those people too? It's not,
You have to just hold them throughout the grant process period. I'm not sure if there's anything after that or not.
keep growing.
Well, and you can't control if somebody quits.
Well, exactly, but whenever somebody quits a grant spot, what they say is you have to fill that spot in an expedient fashion. You can't just leave it open forever. You have to make a effort to fill it in a reasonable amount of time, is what they say.
Did we bill for that position? We billed the grant, or they gave you all the lump sum in the beginning and?
It's a monthly bill out. I have a spreadsheet and give it to Gunny, and he handles it.
Do you have to pay back the entire grant if you reduce staffing?
If you go against the contract, it's a possibility you could have to pay back the entire grant.
We definitely need to get our attorney to look at that. If possible. Okay, so moving on, those are the recommendations that I had in the fire department. That would leave a net of 12 people in the fire department, and based off what Chief, again, I know these department heads are gonna come tell us that we need all the people that they could possibly have, and I understand that, but in the Parks Department, we would have the Parks Director, the Superintendent, and the Equipment Operator. In the Police Department, we would have a Chief, an Assistant Chief, a Lieutenant, 3 sergeants, and I think one of those sergeant spots is open, is that right? 2 detectives. Is that right, Assistant Chief? 1 sergeant, we don't have 1 sergeant position filled right now? Yeah. So I'm putting that back in, a sergeant. We would have 2 detectives, 3 corporals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 officers, one of which would be paid out of the drug fund, and then the IT administration. So that would be a total of 21 in the PD.
In mine, in here, I took that open out, which I got 20.
So it's a net change of 2. And the street department would stay the same. That was just a recommendation of how I think we can get to, that 3.5 million. Tom, Mr. Hall, somebody at this table may have a different recommendation, different solution. That was what I came up with.
I know this is very stressful for everybody involved, especially the employees. But we have never been able to afford what we've had. We managed it because we were spending all of our money. And I don't see us going into another year carrying the same load that we've been carrying that we can't maintain. We're not going to grow our way out of this unless we get some huge industry here because even if we got 1,000 new homes, that's also more services we've got to provide. More people that we have to provide services to. The money we're going to get is just going to be eat up by what we have to continue to do. So there's no way for us to grow out of it.
From the property tax standpoint, you are
Right.
correct. From the sales tax revenue, it would help if
I-
they spent money here.
If they spend money here, but my thing is you spend money wherever you work. If I go to work in Brentwood, I run out on my lunch and do shopping. And I bet a whole lot of the people who work outside the city do the same thing. I just don't see that sales tax is ever going to increase enough to make us be able to afford all of our staff,
I just
unless we cut salaries.
I just want to say that I think that by not taking these drastic actions now, we're going to have a sustainability problem. And we're going to be looking at
Forever.
a year or 2 years from now ways to come back in here and fix it again, or we're going to be asking the citizens for another quarter, or whatever it is. We've got to become sustainable, and although it hurts, we need to pull the Band-Aid off of this now, fix it, and let's move forward so that next year, the 51, 52, however many employees that we can retain are not sitting here worrying budget time whether or not we're going to have to be having the same discussion again. We're creating sustainability in the organization. You know, we send our leaders, Mr. Hall and Patty, to these meetings out in the county and other places with municipalities in the state or in this county rather, that are in a better financial position that we are. And the last thing we need is to send one of them to one of those meetings right now, and lo and behold, the county needs some money out of that school's facilities tax to do some project, and we can't have our leaders in a position to say, sure, let's cut them a check. I mean, that's the reality of where we are, and you know, I've used the word crossroads several times tonight, but I think sustainability is another good word. We need to look at sustainability and how we're going to move forward into the future on better financial footing, and it's going to be a combination of fiscal responsibility and this unfortunate tax increase. That's how I see it.
Well, and I agree completely with what Shannon is saying. I feel like every proposal we've looked at has something to do, as a proposal for a property tax increase. And as a citizen, and I look at this, you know, that's what I'm on here for, as a citizen viewpoint, I don't necessarily have a problem with you asking me for more money, putting a little more burden on me if you're willing to show you're doing the same thing. And when we're not willing to make those types of cuts, that's when I would have a problem you coming asking me for money. And so we absolutely, I feel like this is the time that we have to make these cuts. And it's not fun. I mean, out of the proposals at this point, personally, I like your proposal. I like the way you're looking at it in a sense of it's better to hurt in a bad term, I guess, but a layoff is what it is. I'd rather have that with the few than the whole. And you know, I've been involved on both sides of layoffs, and it's not fun. But, you know, I think we're to a point where we don't have a choice but make that decision. Because I think I looked at Tom's, and I may be reading Tom's proposal wrong, but it said something about next year, 16, 17, we're still looking for another $300,000. Well, we don't need to be looking for another $300,000 next year. We need to be already setting ourselves up this year so that we don't have to be looking for an extra $300,000 next year. And make these tough decisions and make these cuts and live thinner and meaner and leaner for a couple of years until we get ourselves to that point where we don't have to worry about finding that $300,000. And I feel like morale-wise, I'm with Stuart on this one. I think morale's going to suffer either way. And morale's not great even now because they see us having this budget talk. They know what's going on. They would rather know, have a decision, let's move forward with it as a city, than always wondering and always worrying and always knowing if I'm going to have a paycheck or is it going to be decreased or what's the case may be. It's easier to know, take it in, face it, and move forward with it. And I just feel like that allows us to do that, so.
I would like to amend the motion to send the city staff back, or the city manager back to discuss with their department heads and come back and present us with these cuts. And then we'll schedule another meeting to review it.
Are you asking that they come back with a $3.5 million figure?
I like that figure.
That's what I was saying, give them a set amount and let them make the cuts based on fitting in that amount.
I mean,
3.5.
I was okay with the 4.2 that they never could get to, but.
No. I'm talking about just employee-related expenditures. I'm fine with the $773,000 that he has in the operating
Operating budget,
expenditures.
yeah.
The only number in Tom's budget that I felt like we needed to look at closely was on the expenditure side was the salaries, which is $3.5 million. The total employee expenditure,
Within that.
$3.5 million. So if you'll make, either I can, I guess, amend your motion, or,
Well, she just included 3.5 in her
okay, as long as
motion,
it's,
so-
then I'll second that.
Just for clarification, I heard earlier y'all want salaries back in unassigned.
Yes.
And if we're doing that, I would recommend probably taking the salary out of drug fund if we're not gonna use that. Just simply because the drug fund revenue is unpredictable. It's hard to count on, and once it starts getting low, it's hard to count on when the next infusion is gonna be. So that's my only issue with salaries in drug fund.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That does need to be part of the motion. So I guess I'll withdraw my second and need to amend the somebody help me with parliamentary
Okay, I'll
procedure.
remove my amendment.
Restated, she just removed her first
She
suggestion for
withdraws her
motion.
motion and makes a new motion.
Either one of you.
Then you mean to make the motion, Patty, or do you want to
Please.
do it? I'll make the motion that we send Tom's budget back to him with the change in employee-related expenditures to $3.5 million with both the street workers and the drug officer included in that number, or put back into that number.
The unassigned fund.
That's right, the unassigned
I can make
general
that
fund.
suggestion.
Thank you. That's my motion.
Your motion, go ahead and add, Travis come back to us with the information on to bring it firefighters
Okay,
in March, same thing.
And that is,
there's a motion, is there a second?
I got a little
Okay,
addition to that, and and that Chief O'Neill,
Police Department too. Police Department too, they have safer event,
And I guess the PD too, come back with any information on grants that Mr. Hall may need, and that be provided, obviously, to the city attorney to review.
As far as the staffing levels, if we drop below 4, we have to contact ISO, which means we're going to go back up to a 6, depending on how far we drop, possibly a 7. And you're looking at 2%, maybe 4%. Okay.
Okay, so we have a first and second on the amended motion.
I don't think we got a second.
Second.
Now we do.
Okay. First and second on the amended motion. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. That gives us to item C, discuss and take action on employee health plan for the 2015-2016.
I move to defer that. Again, I hate to, but
Okay, first and second on deferring.
Defer them to when, the next meeting?
till the next meeting.
When we said it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Move to adjourn.
Yes, do we want to discuss the meeting, or are you going to let us know?
They'll let us know
Okay.
when they can get it together.
I'll try to have you an answer by the 19th, which is next Tuesday.
Okay.
That is the night of the case of the town, if it makes a difference.
What time does it start? 7? 6:30?
Hey, we need to see you, so,
Okay.
2 minutes.
Monday at 5.
Yeah, Monday at 5, if
Can you,
everybody.
can you have it by Monday possibly?
I could have that ready, just check.
Let me double check Monday at 5, but I think.
There's something on the 19th, but it may be during the day, right?
19th.
That's why you
Yeah,
wanted
you
to
might
put this
be-
meeting on the 19th.
Well,
Feel better at that time.
we meet that Thursday, don't we, for a
Let's
board
do
and
it
commission, prior to the
Let's do it at
board?
5 o'clock on Thursday, since we'll be here anyway.
Okay, so we will have the next meeting on the 21st,
Can you make it?
which at 5 o'clock.
We'll see.
Possibly,
It's
okay.
possible. I'll try
At
to-
5
yeah,
o'clock,
let's do it.
sorry, okay.
5 o'clock, okay.
Okay,
Rearrange
so
schedules.
we had a movement to adjourn, so we are adjourned to the next time.
Okay.